I'm Kimberly with the Fat Quarter Shop, and Jen Kingwell from Australia is a brand new Moda fabric designer, and she's going to show us how to hand quilt. And I really think hand quilting is an art that some people just have, and Jen definitely has it. So, tell me a little bit about, if you want to start hand quilting, what are the basic supplies you need, and then we'll go more into it.
You don't really need a lot to start hand quilting. Needles and thread, your quilt top, back and batting. That's it.
So what type of needles are you using?
I use a chenille 24, or you can use a crewel 8, but so long as your thread goes through the eye, it has a sharp point, that's all that you need.
And what type of thread are you using?
Aurifil 12. I really love it. It gives a nice bold colour, and it's such a great choice of colours, but you get a really nice bold stitch.
Well, Aurifil has so many color options, so I think that's great for quilters because they can just pick what's perfect. And I don't think I've ever seen a quilt that's quilted like this. I just love it. So tell me a little bit about how you came up with this design.
Well, it's a little bit like Japanese shishiko. It's just a little cross stitch, but it's exactly the same technique as you would normally use. You just baste your layers together. Instead of just being an in and out, up and down running stitch, you just form little crosses and carry your stitch from one cross to the next. You just have to be careful that if you were using a very fine and a very light colour and a dark coloured thread, you might see your thread carry between the stitches. So you need to just consider that when you're choosing your thread colour if you're going to quilt in this manner. On the back, you're not going to get a cross. Your cross is formed on the front, and the back is just your tiny little stitch that you're picking up to form the cross. So that's what the back's going to look like, just little quilting stitches.
Okay, so let's move on to looking at batting. So tell me how you baste your quilts.
Right. There are three sort of basic ways. There's probably more than three, but these are what most people use. So there's the traditional thread basting, where you just do a big running stitch. Depending on the batting that you choose to use, your quilting, all bats have a quilt rating at the distance apart that they need to be quilted, and basically you need to stick to that with your basting as well, just to hold it together. So a good rule of thumb is about a fist distance apart. Safety pins, I use a curved size 2. They're about an inch long, I guess, and they've got a curved, it just makes it easier on your hands to pop them through. And the micro stitch tagging gun, which is just like your normal
clothing tags,
except they're on a tiny, tiny, tiny little shank, which holds really close. And the reason I love these is your thread doesn't get caught as you're quilting. It doesn't get caught, as it sometimes can tangle around your safety pin.
And when you clip these off, how do you clip them off?
Look, I just use my scissors, and as I go, when I'm quilted up to that area, I just pop it forward from behind and just slip the tip of my scissors and just snip. It's a good idea. These little tags come in white and black, and I use the colour that contrasts most with the quilt, so they're easy to see.
And what, out of the three methods, which one do you do most often?
Probably this one.
Because it's
pinning or tagging. I rarely thread baste anymore. It just takes too much time.
And tell me what type of battings you use.
Okay, I use two mainly. I love the Quilter's Dream Request Cotton, and that's probably the one that I would use 90% of the time because it's fine, light, and really, really nice to hand quilt. But if I want something with a little more loft, I'll use the Hobbs wool batting, and it just makes your quilt a little puffier, and it gives a bit more definition in your stitching. So before I actually start stitching, after I've basted, I think about how or where I want to quilt, and I will mark my quilt up. And there are several ways that you can do this. These are just a few. You can, with a ruler or just freehand and a pencil, mark where you might like to quilt. The other thing is a Hera marker, which just creases your fabric, and with time that line just relaxes, so it just marks. It's not a permanent mark, it's just literally a crease in your fabric. And the other thing would be to use a piece of tape. The only secret with this one is when you put it down, don't put one end down and stretch it on, just actually lay it on the top of your fabric, because if you hold one end and stretch it, as you stitch, it will pucker. So they're the three main ways that I will mark my quilt. Then to start stitching, tie a knot in the end of your thread. I leave about roughly 1/2 inch tail, and I'm going to start stitching here. So what I will do is pop my thread in. Now I'm in the wadding, or the batting in the center. I haven't come through to the back. Pull that forward, and when your knot gets to your fabric, just give it a little tug and you'll hear it pop in. Just gently pull that to the end. Now I don't use a hoop, so I quilt in a manner that's called lap quilting, and what I do is I let the weight of the quilt actually provide the tension. So when I sit, I let the quilt drape down, and that actually provides the tension in my quilting. And then it is basically a running stitch. Now some people might like to just do one stitch at a time. I do several. And what you're aiming to get is that your stitch length and your gap are roughly the same. If you probably can't see that, but if you're quilting on the edge, of course you can just hold like that. But if you've got a large quilt and you're in the center, you'll need to tuck the quilt into the heel of your hand. So just tuck it in. And it's that simple. So as well as just the running stitch or straight stitch quilting, I will sometimes quilt with a little cross, and that's very easy. Start in the same manner, your little knot, pop it into the batting in the middle, not coming through to the back, and then you literally just take, now you can make these crosses as large or as small as you want them to be, so it's just take a little stitch going through all 3 layers and come up. So you will have on the back a little, sorry, I'll pull a thread through so that you can see the colour. On the back you will just have a little straight stitch like so, and then complete your cross, right? Then take your thread in the batting down to where you wish to do your next stitch. Come up, take your little bite going through all of the layers, and head off to where you wish to do your next one. So on the back, all you're getting are those little stitches, you're not getting your trailing thread. This is really quick and easy. Cover a lot of distance in a short amount of time. Now when you want to finish, and this is for both stitches, take your thread through to the back, make a circle with your thread and come up in the center. Now if you put your needle in that loop, you can control where that loop ends up. I just run it right down to the fabric, and then just pull slightly to the side, pop your needle back into the hole that you've come out, and once again with your needle in the wadding, and you just pop that back in and snip your thread off at that point.
So Jen and I want you to try hand quilting, and we want you to post it on Instagram and social media and hashtag Jen Kingwell, Fat Quarter Shop, and FQS Fun, so we can see how you've used Jen's awesome hand quilting techniques.